He was a good trainer. Now I see Melinda and her lovely husband.
Love that. Love that. You want to go first? You
If I'd known that was coming, I would have dressed better, actually. Michael Loberg. I am chair of the Tisbury Board of Health. I am on the Tisbury Water Resources Committee. I'm a member of the Vineyard Conservation Society and played a role with the town in the development of the new nitro technologies that are that create an opportunity to remove nitrogen from traditional septic systems.
Great.
And I'm Melinda Loberg. I am president of Tisbury Waterways, which is a nonprofit pond organization, and I'm really glad to see Rick Homans on the screen because we're very concerned about Tashmoo, as he has given voice to.
All right, Jerry, you're next.
Gary Hokinson. I'm also with Tisbury Waterways, and I also work with the town when I can, when they're willing to look into various stormwater issues and stormwater management.
All right, Greg.
Hello, Greg Palermo. I'm with Friends of Senjikantaket.
All right, good group. Rick Homans. I haven't done him yet, have I?
Yeah, I jumped in right at the beginning, Richard. Sorry about that.
That's right. You did. Okay, I just didn't connect the face.
Yeah, that's me.
Amy.
Hi, thanks. I am the current president of the Chilmark Pond Association, and I'm affiliated with the new Chilmark Pond Foundation. And this is my first one of these meetings, so I'm really happy to be here and meet all of these people who care about the same kind of stuff that I care about. So thank you.
You're welcome. Glad you're here. Adam Turner. For those of you who don't
Thank you,
know.
Mr. Toole. Adam Turner, MVC. I'm with half of Sherry Casson, huddled around, and we're doing a variety of different stuff, from the grant we just got with EPA, which the first year is in Tisbury, but future years will be in Oak Bluffs to basically clean up the lagoon pond, to the Up Island 208 plan that we're doing. And I could go on and on. We got a lot of things in the air. But I will say one thing from the commission standpoint, and I'll turn it over to Sherry if you want, that we're focused on solutions. And this year, we did a PRB. We also were involved with Michael Loberg and the Tisbury stuff for various parts of the John Smith Nitro stuff. And we continue to press the envelope in terms of finding solutions and getting them in the ground. Sherry, you want to say anything?
I'll just introduce myself now, and then we can. Are you finished with the introductions, Richard? Or
No, we got quite a few more to go.
Okay.
Okay.
The water resource planner. Sorry, I moved my office back upstairs, and the audio worked yesterday fine, but
Yeah, we're also
glitchy.
very happy that so many people showed up. This is a very important issue, and seeing you and Gail, former commissioners, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you for hosting this. Ronnie H.
I think that is me, but I don't know. One of my teenage sons put me on as Ronnie H, but my name is Annie Holmes, and
Annie Holmes.
yes, my middle name is Ronella. That's why they did that. But anyway, I live on Tashmoo, have lived on the island 30 years, and I am wanting to get informed and involved, and was able to make this meeting. So here I am. Hi, Rick.
Great. That is the beauty of Zoom. I'll tell you that. You can be anywhere and participate. So that's great. Let's see. It says Barbara Sharelis.
Hi. Yes, actually, a logistical thing. Something's changed with Zoom, and I'd be grateful if I'm on another family member's computer. So indeed, to be redundant, I am John Shirless. I'm a evolutionary biologist turned conservation biologist. And I've been involved with the Vineyard since about 1963, and since then at Old House Pond, originally Manaquayak, according to Mr. Banks, and popularly known as well as Ice House Pond, as are many other ponds across the country. Though I don't think any others are known as Old House Pond. I was involved with
Which town is that in? So everybody isn't too confused.
Old House Pond is the pond that is accessed by the Land Bank's Manaquayak Preserve. It's in West Tisbury, in the Lambert's Cove area.
Okay, that's what I thought.
South of the Lambert's Cove Inn, and east of Uncle Seth's Pond.
Yep. Thank you.
So I've been involved with this since, I guess, the now defunct Martha's Vineyard watershed team, which I helped transmogrify with Bob Woodruff and a few others from death to the Water Alliance, which I'm delighted to be back in with. The last email I had about the Water Alliance was in March of last year. So I looked online, but I'm very, very glad to see everybody, some familiar faces, and that things are going again. So I have a strong interest in fresh water with the late Rusty Walton and Bill Wilcox. I initiated and helped lead the first ever survey of pretty much all surface fresh water on the Vineyard some years ago. So I was once a lonely voice for fresh water. I hope that will no longer be the case.
Nope, I'm glad to have you on board, and you worked with some great people. Let's see, we have Kathy Newman.
I'm on the Martha's Vineyard Commission, and I'm really here because I'm the newest member of the Board of Health in Aquinnah, and I'm on a learning curve here about nitrogen and ponds, and I just thought I'd listen in and learn as much as I could. So thanks.
Great, thank you. Good to have you. Marcella Andrews.
Hi, I'm the laboratory analyst at the Wampanoag Environmental Lab.
Great. Let's see, Julie Pringle.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julie. I am the scientific program manager for Great Pond Foundation. So I work with David and Emily.
Wow, what a team. Wow. And we have Gail Barmakian.
Hi, Richard. I'm the voice of dissension from Oak Bluffs.
Thank you for being so honest.
That's what you say.
Yes.
It's the voice of reason. I'm a member of the Wastewater Commission and also on the working committee for the Oak Bluffs Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan, which is not just sewering, but it's how we're going to address the nitrogen issue according to the Mass Estuaries Project, which involves all alternatives. And also a member of the joint Oak Bluffs Lagoon Pond Committee.
Great, appreciate all your hard work. Danielle.
Hi, I'm Danielle. I'm the Tisbury Shellfish Constable.
Oh yeah, there you are.
Yeah, here I am.
Huh.
Good to see you guys.
Great, good to see you. What do we got left here? I got another Martha's Vineyard Commission, but is that one of you two that have already spoken? Or is there somebody else?
That would be
Chuck's
me,
here.
Richard. My computer's on upstairs.
Okay. And
I
then we
think
got
Chuck's here,
Chuck's
Richard.
iPhone.
Yeah.
Hi, Richard. This is Chuck Fisher, Oak Bluff Shellfish Constable. Please excuse my name, how it pops up. My IT professional is my nephew. So, but I'm glad
Yeah,
to
I
join you
see
folks
Uncle
today.
Chuck's. That's great. That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Good to have you on board. Rachel Sorrentino.
Hi, I'm working with MVC on the 208 report, so I'm just here to listen.
Wow, great. 208 report. All right, have I gotten everybody?
We have one more,
One more. Who is it?
Aquinnah Board of Health.
Oh yeah, there you are. I'm sorry. I started with myself and you were before me.
Hi, I'm Karen. at the Aquinnah Board of Health.
Wow, so Aquinnah is really well represented here for such a small town. All right, so Sherry, did you have any order or rhyme or reason to how we're going to go through the different things that are happening on the island? Or
Okay, we just have not met in so long, you know, we kind of waited until COVID got over and we never know when that's gonna happen. So I figured we would go ahead and just kind of just take 5 minutes, everybody, and just say what they've been up to. Or no, was that was the original plan we thought of, Richard? Will that still work?
it might. I mean, it seems like it might take a lot of time.
Right.
Could we do it like pond by pond or town by town? What do you think of that?
Sure. I can just start and just give a couple minutes of everything I've been doing, which it's like amazing. It's like what I've not been doing. But I can just catch you up quick that we installed the PRB and that we're testing the PRB and the PRB is working. So that's great. We have a watershed grant for the Lagoon Pond, and that is with UNH, University of New Hampshire. And EPA did some research with stormwater in town of Tisbury. And so we're going to implement some of their findings. So that will mediate some of the pollution that's going into Lagoon Pond. We're also going to be working with Emma and working with Phragmites. We're going to put in another PRB through this grant. And we are going to, there's one more component of, we're also going to be looking at the cyanobacteria. That's going to be a huge component of it. And with cyanobacteria, that's, we have done an island-wide study. So we have looked at all the ponds on the island, not all of them, all of our coastal ponds that we monitor for water quality. And we're just seeing what's present. And we've been, responding to any blooms that are there. We work also with the University of New Hampshire. They helped develop the protocol for EPA. So we're using their protocol and methods. And the grant for the IA systems, are we getting that? Or is that, we've put in a grant for putting in 50 IA systems around the island. Innovative Alternative is an IA system, which reduces the nitrogen output from the septic tank. So we've put in a grant for that. So it's been a really busy year. And then we've done the water quality at the 13 ponds on the island that we do every summer. We've tested every pond at least 4 times this summer. And we will be doing, Tisbury has been opened. So we'll be testing them again to see the efficacy of the opening. And also when Chilmark Pond is open, we'll be testing there also.
I'd also like to since we met, we did hire a climate change planner, Liz Durkee, who is the former Conservation Commission agent. And we're doing it with a lot of water projects with that. We're doing an island-wide adaptation plan. We're doing a storm tide pathways, which takes the basic flood maps, the LiDAR maps, and the modeling that they do for the topo, and actually doing a aerial and a very detailed topo map, and then looking where the flood, doing our own sort of flood tide pathway project. We're doing a lot of salt marsh stuff. We modeled Senjataket. That might be something we do for Tajmu as well. Similar kind of project. So that's a big step for us. We have somebody full-time working on climate change, and it's also got electrical and other kinds of benefits, but our capacity is much improved.
So I'm sorry, that was like an all island overview. Maybe we can then go into different ponds. I don't know, sorry.
Yeah, no, we see.
Can we do towns instead of ponds? Because I think it's onerous to do each pond possibly. I don't know.
Muted, or can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me now. All right. Before we move on, that's why I'm going to do it. I've written down all the ponds, but basically they're all the towns. Are there any questions from anybody? Another thing I wanted to add to the commission is that for those of you who have never been on their website, you really should check it out. It's so accessible and there's so much information on that website about what is going on this island. And it's just so easy to access. I can't believe how well it works. It's just fascinating. So just keep that in mind. Does anybody have any questions for Sherry or Adam?
I have a proposal, Greg Palermo.
Yep.
We have really a big group of people who have a varied interests and varied geographic interests. And it would be great if we could share emails. I wonder, is there anybody in this group who doesn't want his email shared? And if not, can we just have the whole email list go out rather than the BCC that the Water Alliance has traditionally done for years and years?
I would love that too. I feel the same way. I think that the list is really long. That's probably, some people on there might be really old. So I feel like the commission wants to protect some of their identities perhaps, but hopefully they can have the chance to opt out, because I would love to be able to have more, back and Sherry blast out an email and then us just kind of like chime in with stuff. And
right.
What's this,
I
Emma?
can,
We're
I can easily
old?
do that. I can send out an email saying, if you don't want your email shared, let me know and I'll take you off the list. Yeah, that would work. I think in the past there were people who didn't, God forbid we want to be known as someone who supports the Water Alliance. I don't know. Yeah, the list needs to be updated too, because there's a lot of senators and things that have changed. So, and I keep getting kickback. So I can take a look at that. But I think that's a really great idea. I can just send out a list saying, we're going to send it open from now on. And if you have a problem with that, let me know and I'll take you off.
Sherry, for those of us who are new, do you need us to send you emails or do you have them?
Did you get an email from me, Amy?
No, someone forwarded it to me.
Okay, then I will add you to the list.
Thank you very much.
Is Mr. Shirless on the list?
Hi, I did get, I'm here because I got the email from Sherry, which to my great delight, I'd had a reply parked to the March 2020 email for a while to say I hadn't heard, but in the early days, it always was an open CC rather than BCC list. And the sense I have is that it did foster communication and collaboration. It was a good thing.
Okay.
I think that's a great suggestion.
Okay, that is a good suggestion. Everybody's good with that?
Richard, someone joined us, an iPhone.
iPhone, who's iPhone? Who is screen says iPhone? Hello, so the person that just joined us, would like you to introduce yourself.
Okay.
Okay.
A question?
Yeah.
I've heard really good things about the permeable reactive barrier. And by that, I mean its installation, but mostly the data. But I haven't seen anything numerical. Is the data still being cleaned up, or is it some of it that can be shared? And this would be to Sherry.
This is for the IA systems. That
No, it's at the Hambrick. It's at the Hambrick house, the permeable reactive barrier.
There has been a report done, and we're working on putting together the page for the PRB. So we'll put those reports up there. And Jessica just gave a presentation to UMass Dartmouth yesterday, and I'll put a link to her presentation. So that'll kind of give an overview, and she'll talk about the data. So the report will be there, and her talk. Adam attended it yesterday.
Yeah.
Jessica works for UMass Dartmouth.
Jessica is the UMass Dartmouth lead.
Okay, for those of you who don't know, that is located, the house to the south of the museum on the end of the pond.
You can pick it out pretty easily by the white PVC pipes that we have in her front yard. She's definitely a saint.
Definitely a saint.
But for clarification, the PVC is only above ground, and in the ground is what, stainless steel or
Stainless
something
steel
like that.
pipes.
It is not PVC going
The
into
PVC is just to protect the pipes so nothing's going, dirt and bugs aren't going into the wells. But the PVC is only only what you see on the surface is all the PVC that's there. And when we
Yeah.
did the injections, we didn't leave anything in the ground except for the oils.
Might want to just explain that a little better, oil.
With the permeable reactive barrier, we didn't use the wood chip design. We used the oil. It's like a soybean oil. It's with an emulsified soybean oil, so it sticks to the sand, to the ground, and it doesn't move. And we've actually, that's part of what we've just done too, is we've done studies. We put in more wells along that we took right back out after we tested, and we could see how far that the oil from the permeable reactive barrier has moved, and it has stayed pretty much within 5 feet of where we injected the oil.
Because that could be a concern that the soybean oil would start to like migrate into the lagoon. And
Yes.
and so they've confirmed that that's not happening.
Right.
Melinda?
I just want to thank the commission and particularly Adam and Sherry for pursuing this grant for the PRB. It turned out to be probably a lot more work and a lot more complicated approach than originally thought. And I want to give kudos to Gail Barmakian too, because Tisbury and Oak Bluffs worked on this together to get it to the grant stage, the grant applying stage. But I too want to give kudos to Jessica, with whom I've spoken, because I go over there and snoop around all the time. And she is really an incredible lead on this project and deserves a lot of credit. And she brings along 2 or 3 students who are gathering data and samples and so forth. They're all very enthusiastic, and I think this project is going to prove some things about PRBs, and particularly about the siting of them, that will be good learnings for other communities and for us in other parts of the island. So I think it's yay for everybody.
Great. Any more questions to the commission at this time?
Yeah, Sherry, if you could, you mentioned before these tests that are being done on the water, I guess 4 times a year. Can you just briefly explain that a little bit more? And are those test results available online, or does one have to, where would one get those?
When we go out, we sample, actually Tajmu was, I think I heard was your main interest. We test with Buzzards Bay Coalition, and we've actually been in Tajmu even more than 4 times. So when we go out, we take the field parameters of temperature, salinity, dissolved oxygen, and pH. Those are those we have now. The nutrients sampling and the chlorophyll sampling we have to send to the lab for analysis, and that will be available this fall. The testing takes a while to get it QA'd and QC'd. So that will be available. And as soon as we get that, we're putting together 1-page reports. And are you a member of TWI?
No, not yet, but I'm going to be.
Yay!
Yay.
We all work together here.
Yeah,
We're actually
absolutely.
putting out our 1-page reports for 2020 in the next week or so. And one of the projects we want to work on is we have like 25 years of data. We have so much data that we just haven't done a very good job of putting out there. But the Cape Cod Commission has done a really good job of they got a $500,000 grant to do it, but I think it could be applicable to us. And we're going to put all our data up there so that somebody, Rick, like you, who wants to see it and wants to do their own research, you can see all the various tests. Sherry's done great, Bill Wilcox before. We've got, we have a ton of data and understand it, and we need to it's part of the 208 work that we're doing, is putting all that data up on the screen so that you can see it up on the website.
Yeah. The database that the Cape Cod Commission was given a grant for, and the tribe has also gotten a grant similar to this. We would put the data in, and then it would be a queryable data set, which would be awesome, because then you could look at trends over time.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have all of our pond data from all of that everything that we've collected, we will have put in there.
Yeah.
It'll be a major undertaking,
Right.
but then you can say, I want to see temperature, because it's been huge with climate change. I want to see temperature over time, and you would be able to query it and do it. So the Cape Cod Commission has done it, and I'm pretty sure that I would have to have Becky confirm, but she's working on that also. So within the next year, we should have that all up. So all the trends, and we would, then once we got the coastal ponds up, we would get the freshwater, and then we need to start looking at the freshwater ponds again. So I'm glad you're here.
Fantastic.
In the past, when we did the survey that Rusty and Bill Wilcox were involved with, I was incredibly lucky to get the very enthusiastic cooperation of, just completely blanked on her name, the wonderful woman who was then the head of the national parks, U.S. National Parks, Cape Cod National Seashore Water Lab, came over to the Vineyard with her assistant, and they did all the analysis for us, because of course the seashore has an incredible number of coastal plain ponds, or kettle ponds. And so to be able to get the data from that survey and whatever there is since then up online, Sherry, that would be a great contribution, and maybe help catalyze the replication of that survey.
Michael Loberg, I see your hand.
In terms of monitoring and following, the commission put together for us what has happened in the watershed in Tisbury with respect to development. And the number of Title V systems have gone up by 10% between when the MEP program was put together and we needed to remove 11,000 pounds annually from the Tisbury's 2 watersheds to now. I was wondering if there's any in-pond data that correlates with that 10% increase or refutes it. There's no penalty for not having it.
Tajmu, I have seen a slight increase. That's one of the things that we would like to do, is to have analysis, because we'll see a year go down, and it's like, well, why did that year go down? Was it, meteorological? Why was there no runoff that year? So I'm not seeing any changes. Tajmu is definitely not getting any better. It is getting worse.
Can I just chime in here?
Except for by the cut, and then it's flushing really well, because the inlet has been opened.
Yeah, we did just get a grant to work with NOAA to basically do a major climate evaluation, to look at rainfall, to look at temperature, to look at wind, to look at all those things, because we think that's a correlation too, especially in shallower ponds, that if you don't get rain and it's hot, it's like a little. So we had NOAA has 60 years of that. So we just entered into agreement with them to do a very detailed study of that. So that's another component that we'll add.
Gail, go ahead.
Yeah, in the process of the CWMP, it's a regulatory process, so the science needs to be accepted by DEP, or if it's a experimental science, for instance, a PRB would be considered experimental, because it's data driven. The challenge is that we need to satisfy that process. So, when Michael talks about the increase in Title V systems, it's hard to determine, because this is something we're going to have to prove in the CWMP, what the change is, if any. And part of our process has been to monitor the additional number of bedrooms and construction in the watershed. And we've done that. And, you attach a number to it about how many more pounds that contributes to the pond, but it doesn't necessarily pan out in the numbers, so it's a very difficult science, and there are a lot of different components. So in any event, what the CWMP will do is to basically try and prevent the amount of nitrogen from going into the pond that's presently going in up to a certain number, and hopefully that may have an effect. So I don't know, it's just I guess my comment is the data is so very important, but it's also difficult to pinpoint why the data numbers appear the way they do, and the challenge of that.
Yeah, thanks, Gail.
Kathy?
I'm going to ask a really naive question, but this is my learning curve. How is all this data going to affect the ability by right of people to have X amount of bedrooms because of the perk test? Because we just kind of are running into that in Aquinnah a little bit. And, you know, somebody asked on a 2-acre, which in Aquinnah is a lot, to have an 8-bedroom permit. By right, the land perked for that. Am I just being naive here, or is there some connection between these two?
My understanding is that the perk is just for drinking water because you have your own wells, isn't it? It's not a perk for nitrogen contribution. Is that what you're talking about?
I've been told, but I haven't, again, this is new for me, that if
What
you,
else-
if it perks well, then you have a right to X amount, a Title V system with X amount of bedrooms.
What we're doing in the CWMP is there's a zoning component to it. So DEP attaches an amount of nitrogen by weight to each bedroom on a parcel. And we're going to limit the amount of nitrogen contributed by, well, we're hopefully to each parcel through zoning and number of bedrooms. So I don't know if Aquinnah is, has that bylaw. Go ahead.
The perk test is a septic tank installation test that they use to see where groundwater is and how much it gets into the ground and whether they can control it. But nitrogen, you know, Title V septic tank doesn't specifically control nitrogen. It doesn't specifically, Michael, maybe you're on the Board of Health, but the town would have to control it because it's not, I don't believe it's a state requirement to control nitrogen.
A lot of the, some of the boards of health have DC/PC restrictions that further affect the shoreline. Some of them have regulations that affect the amount of nitrogen you could put in the ground per acre of lot size. But in general, we're concerned because the amount of nitrogen going into the pond clearly increases with development. And all I will say is that Tisbury has held 2 public hearings and will certainly hold at least one more on some denitrification regulations that will better govern the amount of nitrogen that go into the ground, so that if somebody is doing any construction or anything that puts new nitrogen into the ground, then they in some fashion or another will have to be accountable for that.
Kathy, I don't think your question's naive at all. I think it's at the center of what everybody wants to know, because you can have the science of understanding where the impairment is in a pond, but there isn't always a regulation that sort of matches up to that science. And the regulation by the DEP might be 10 years behind the recent measurements. And so we were presenting some Tisbury Great Pond data to the West Tisbury Board of Health, or the West Tisbury Conservation Commission. And they said the Conservation Commission doesn't really have sort of the authority to limit things, but Board of Health regulations and zoning board can make regulations within a town that limit development in nitrogen. They said that's where the muscle is, at least in their town. And I don't know if it's the same for every town, but they said that's how it would work in West Tisbury. But there's sometimes the information isn't getting to the right boards. And so maybe one of these things the Water Alliance can do is figure out what information needs to go where, because there's plenty of information and expertise, but it's not always directed in the right place.
Thanks,
Yep.
Emily.
That's a good point, just for people's information. The high school field project has been quite controversial. And they went before the Board of Health in Oak Bluffs yesterday, day before. And there are some issues that the Board of Health is going to have to hold them to. So boards of health, a lot of power. Go
Can I
ahead, Jim.
just chime in? Because Oak Bluffs is in the middle of this process, and that's what the CW, Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan is, which is really a nitrogen plan. And I don't know if, I don't think towns that don't have sewer are able to or have to do this. And it's almost, because we have sewer, we have to do it because we have to address nitrogen, not sewering, nitrogen. And all of this that you're discussing is exactly what we're doing. So the relevant boards, we have this working committee, and the relevant boards are the Board of Health, where the regulations of on-site septic systems are, the planning board, which is zoning, the building department, which is anytime you apply for a building permit, there will be regulations about if you're in a watershed, this is the number of bedrooms, depending on how much nitrogen is contributed that you can have. So it's the Board of Health, the planning board, the building department. And so there will be regulations in each relevant department for the bigger picture. And that is part of the whole CWMP plan. Again, that's only towns that I think have sewer are forced to do that. And I think the 208, what Adam had mentioned, are towns that are nitrogen plans, basically, that are like CWMPs without sewer. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it is definitely an organized effort that encompasses different boards and jurisdictions. And so we're in the kind of, like I said, the middle of it. Takes a lot of organization.
But that, Kathy, that's also not to say that you would not be wanting to respond to the Mass Estuaries reports for your ponds with plans to remediate. And it may not take the form of a CWMP, but it would certainly be some kind of management plan that would address it.
Thanks, Melinda.
Okay, I think in order to get other people a chance to speak on their individual issues, if anybody has any more questions, I see Rick Carney, just a second. After Rick, you're gonna go after I speak, but after this, I think anybody has any more questions in regards to what the MVC, questions with the MVC, they should email either Adam or Sherry directly, okay? Okay, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, a quick question. Sherry brought up stormwater, and I just had some concerns, and maybe could be answered by somebody in Tisbury, but I was surprised that it appears to be a newly black coated, impervious surface parking lot put in by the town just up the hill from the post office. Considering all the problems that Five Corners has with flooding and the fact that impervious surfaces really increase pollution, both chemical and bacterial, to the ponds, how did that go in? And is there any, maybe I don't know, maybe there is some kind of a something there that's going to control some of that instead of just running it right onto the state road and Beach Road?
I could comment on that, Rick. Originally, the plan for that parking lot was to be a gravel parking lot. During the University of New Hampshire's and EPA's study of stormwater runoff in that section of town, they very carefully and thoroughly measured the water coming down State Road to Beach Street, and had a plan, a proposed technology that might divert some of that water. The whole point of the EPA's study is to disconnect impervious surfaces so that water doesn't race down paved roads to gather in Five Corners, for example, but get it off upstream. And the DOT actually looked at the technology proposed and was very interested because this state road is their road to be taken care of. And I believe that they have incorporated some of this technology into their 2023 budgetary plans for improvements to State Road. Also, you'll have to ask the select board how it got from a gravel road, gravel parking lot, all of a sudden into a paved parking lot. That was not part of the plan that the planning board put forward, nor is it something that was supported by TWI, who's been very involved with stormwater. But in any event, maybe by 2023, when DOT addresses the issue in their road, the improvements will be made then.
Thank you.
Good point, Rick. After the big flood, what, last weekend? Holy smokes. Let's see, we gotta move this along. Is there anything else that anybody wants to say about the lagoon? Danielle, do you have anything to chime in about the lagoon?
We've just been working on, we emptied out the rest of our quahog rafts this last month, and they seem to be growing really well. Our scallop season is, well, that's something that I got to discuss with the Waterways Committee tonight, and it doesn't look very good in the lagoon nor in Tashmoo. I may just recommend to open it for a weekend just to give everybody a shot to go scalloping. However, there's going to be a big area that I'm closing, and just been working on some eelgrass restoration with the shellfish group. I mean, Emma can also elaborate on that. And just, you know, trying to carry on. We've had some closures too, actually, due to DMF regulations regarding marinas and mooring areas. So the maps have changed, and we're going to open up some areas tomorrow. Well, like in Tashmoo, the anchoring areas will be open tomorrow, and some other areas in the lagoon, like down by Rainier's. I have to go put that on the website. And thank you, Richard, and thank you, everybody, but I can't stay long because I have to get back into the office and get some stuff done.
Thank you.
Richard, I see that Doug joined
Yeah,
us.
Doug just joined us. Introduce yourself first, Doug, and then you may speak about what, tell us what your thoughts are on the lagoon. I think you have a pretty good view of it.
I do actually. Yeah, I'm Doug Reese. I'm president of the Lagoon Pond Association. Nice to see everybody. Sorry I was late in joining. Sometimes my real job gets in the way of my volunteer jobs. So we actually haven't had a meeting since our annual meeting back in August. I was traveling in September, so our next meeting is next Monday. You know, as far as my view of the lagoon, I got to tell you, back in late August, the water temperature reading in my boat was 80 degrees in the lagoon. And I mean, I've been here on the pond now 12 years, 8 years, something, I can't remember. I've never seen it at 80. I've seen it at 77, but you know, 80 degrees was, that's a new record in my book. And that, again, you know, goes back to climate change and everything that we're seeing across the board. So, you know, as far as the health of the pond, you know, I'm on the water 2 or 3 days a week. The ponds seem to be in pretty good shape, other than, you know, that little heat wave that we had. There wasn't a lot of jellyfish, the spider crabs. I think the efforts by the shellfish folks grabbing those crabs have definitely eliminated most of them up by my house, which is great. So not sure what else you're looking for. So ask away if you like.
Thank you. That's good. I think we're going to move on to the other end of the island.
Richard, can I just, because we're on Lagoon, and since everybody is here, we're trying to fight a battle with Mass DOT to help restore 2 to 3 very healthy eelgrass beds in Lagoon Pond near the bridge as a result of the construction of the new bridge, which was maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. And if anybody can help in the cause or give any advice on how we can navigate this, because right now there's a big pushback. So I need witnesses of, people that maybe know firsthand that that's in fact what happened, and anybody that has connections at Mass DOT. That's all I have to say. As I know Tisbury is doing some work on the other side, but they're ignoring Oak Bluffs, and it's like 3 unbelievable eelgrass beds, which we have old photographs of. That kind of.
I say
were
talk to
destroyed.
commercial fishermen too, Gail.
I did. In fact, we had witnesses that testified, but did testify in writing to the fact, and DOT is in total denial right now. So I'm working with somebody at the federal level that I guess apparently they wanted for DEP to do an enforcement order. But if anybody knows somebody at DOT that
You've spoken with
can
Phil
work with.
Colarusso at
That's
the
exactly who it is. Yes. He said he's there to help, and he was instrumental at the time when David Grundon was on board fighting for it. But again, there's a lot of pushback at MassDOT.
I can help you guys by writing letters and stuff. Because I used to work over in Oak Bluffs as well, and I know
what
how
happened.
nice those beds were.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Just let me know.
Great. All right, let's go to Aquina. Becky, you want to chime in or?
I think Marcella would be the best person to fill you in on what's going on up here and with the lab. We've got all kinds of projects, and it's been a really, really amazing year. Marcella, take it away.
Yeah, it was a dynamic summer that we had, along with our regular water quality monitoring and Menemption Swignocket Pond. We were also taking samples for nitrogen analysis along with the commission. And we also were monitoring cyanobacteria in several spots in Swignocket Pond. And we've continued to do that in the on the Aquina side for the access path for the side of Aquina to see if there's any cyanobacteria there. We haven't found any, and that's been good, even though we did have that bloom on the other side of the pond. We also have been taking samples for environmental DNA analysis. So we'll get a snapshot of the biodiversity of whatever water sample we take. The DNA within that water is good for about 3 days, and it will hopefully show us whatever has passed through that area. To round things off, we were contracted again with the Department of Public Health for the beach samples for the bacteriological analysis for bathing beaches for public health. Becky, anything I missed? Probably.
Herring.
Herring. Yeah. We contracted Asha Ajmanji for a special project from University of Massachusetts, where she's going to be getting her PhD for a herring and eel project in Swignocket in the Menemption Pond complex. This was our 6th year counting herring. Yep. So we had the weir in with the camera, counted all the herring that passed through, and added to that, we had several events, nights where we would catch the herring and tag them. I believe we tagged a little over 300 fish.
It's actually getting almost closer to 4 now. Yeah, it's pretty up there.
Yeah.
And then folks have also we've been tagging eels in the field too. The goal here is to learn a whole lot more about the movement and the migration. And also this year, we finally completed the Herring Creek dredge project, which we are hoping helps enhance fish passage. And because we've got several years of data before the dredging on with the herring counts, the next couple of years, we're hoping that we'll see an improvement with that. So we got all sorts of great projects happening right now. And Marcella and Andrew and the whole crew have been amazing and dedicated, and they're out there every day. It's really great.
Question?
I've heard that the work on the herring run has made it impossible for people to kayak between Menemsha Pond and Squibnocket Pond. Is that accurate?
Not unless if they don't mind portaging over the culvert that was replaced, then it really shouldn't be that much of an issue. The only time that you are going to find a bit of an issue is with when the herring camera is in there, and there again you'd have to take your kayak up past the enclosure. You can still get through the road culvert.
Thank you.
Yeah, I walked the Herring Creek earlier this week, I think, and or last week, and I think a kayak can still do it.
Okay, Kathy, anything you want to say about your famous town? You're muted. Muted. Thank you.
I'm really, I think Karen has left. You know, I'm new to the Board of Health, so I feel like I'm not a good spokesperson for that, but Becky and those guys have been doing a great job on all the projects that they talked about. And the question, and my prime question is really what I brought up about controlling numbers of bedrooms and runoff and having some good data, you know, to push back on that. So thanks.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Aquina? All right, seeing none, let's move down the next pond to Chilmark. Anybody want to speak anything about what's going on in Chilmark? You know, that's where a lot of these tests are going on for the cyanobacterias. Nobody for Chilmark?
I was in Chilmark yesterday, and it's not an active, real strong bloom, but there is cyano present. There was actually 3 species of cyanobacteria present in the middle pond and at the end of Doctor's Creek. So I've sent those samples off for analysis, and we will be testing those for toxicity.
Is that caused by a combination of both nutrients in the water and temperature of the water?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yep. Thank you. All right, moving.
That's one thing, when we put together the database, we'll be able to, we could track those, and you could pick the different variables and track the temperature versus, and then see, because it's been the last 4 or 5 years that we've been seeing blooms in the middle pond of Chilmark. That's what we got our interest in it.
Great question. Go ahead.
Thanks. Apropos Chilmark, I've looked into Squibnocket Pond a bit on the commission's website, found what you had there, but it's hard to say what is happening with respect to the advisory committee to Chilmark. As far as I can tell, that was a short-lived ephemeral thing that was for a specific purpose. Is there an extant group that is devoted to Squibnocket Pond and it might cross town lines?
There is a Squibnocket advisor. It has a really long acronym. There is still a Squibnocket advisory board. That there was a meeting. Was it the spring? There has been a Zoom meeting since COVID. So it does sort of still exist, and it sounds to me that it's a creation of the planning boards, and it does span both sides of Squibnocket, and a couple of us are on it as well, just, parts of other organizations. And it seems like it's largely led by Wendy Weldon and on the Chilmark side, and Leanne Cowley on the Aquina side.
So to follow up on that, I was actually out in Squibnocket yesterday with Sherry Casso and Rachel and Andrew from the lab, and we basically just did at least for me, an introduction to Squibnocket, because I had never experienced that before. And we are all part of that committee. And we took the last couple of months off just because of summer, but the monthly meetings are going to pick up again shortly. And so that committee is alive and well.
Great, thank you.
Who is,
Go ahead.
Right.
Go ahead.
I just, to avoid using the chat, whom should one contact then about Squibnocket and that association? Would it be Wendy Weldon?
Yeah, I think that, Doug, you were actually referring to the group that we're working on the watershed planning in collaboration with the commission.
Oh,
And
okay,
then
this is
there's
a different one?
Yeah, there's like two different. So
Oh, okay.
if you wanted to be part of the watershed planning group, then you'd probably talk to Sherry and Rachel. And if you want to be part of this town created committee, then you'd probably go to Wendy.
Okay, then.
And I can give you just, if you would like to become part of our 208 working group, I can put you on the list, or I can send you Wendy's email also.
Okay, great. All right, let's move into West Tisbury. Anybody have anything to say about West Tisbury Great Pond, or you've got the ponds on the other side too, the ocean, the island?
Well, I could just say about Tisbury Great Pond that West Tisbury hired a propagation agent, I think it was last year, and it's Will Reich, who is also the part-time assistant with Chilmark Shellfish. And so it's a nice collaboration. And so Will and Isaiah are just every year like upping the ways that they're taking care of the oysters in Tisbury Great Pond. So if you're ever out there and there's really nice kind of big arrays of like floating gear, floats of different sorts. Underneath those are cages of oysters. And the shellfish group, like we grew, we're always just trying to like do more and more and more. And we grew more single oysters, which are set on microculture as opposed to like the big gnarly spat on shell that we do as well. We did more this year than we've ever done before. And so they got more than they've gotten from us in a very, very long time. So there's a lot of oysters growing in Tisbury Great Pond. And the shellfish group we've past couple of years been upping our monitoring of dermo disease, which is that disease that kills oysters. It doesn't hurt people. Because there's been a lot of dermo disease in both Eggertown and Tisbury Great Pond. But for some reason more in Eggertown Great Pond, and we don't know why yet. But we're doing a common garden experiment where we're growing a couple of different strains of local and a hatchery strain, like proven disease-resistant strain of oysters, all the same species, just different, selectively bred strain in both of these great ponds to figure out who has the most dermo and who's going to survive the best, to make sure that we're growing the best oyster for these ponds that are actually going to really survive and keep going. So both, West Tisbury and Chilmark all the time are helping us with that.
On a less upbeat note, in Tisbury Great Pond, I can tell you that about a year ago, parrot's feather was discovered in there. One focus, first time ever on the island.
What was that again? Say that again. I didn't get it.
Parrot's feather was discovered in Tisbury Great Pond. In one of
What is that? Not a parrot's feather.
Parrot's feather is an aquatic invasive plant that began life here as an aquarium plant and an ornamental pond plant. It's from the Amazon. And it's a terrible pest. And up until last year, it had never been found on the island. There were 2 other counties in which it has been found, but another focus in West Tisbury Pond was found this year. And the Conservation Commission organized an eradication effort. They started that a week and a half ago at the first location, and they're planning on trying to attack the second focus next week.
Wow. It isn't one thing, it's something else.
Yeah.
Now that the pond is lower, will they be able to take it out easier?
They waited until the pond was opened, which facilitated their being able to get the first population. But now they found that since the water level's down, they can't get very easily to the second population, which is in Town Cove. And they've got some special piece of equipment that is somehow able to move over marshes, and they're going to attack it with that next week.
Okay.
I had a question that being a shellfish fisher person, acidification. I've caught quite a few oysters that have all kinds of little holes in their shells.
Those holes are actually caused by a boring sponge. Like there's like a sponge, it's an animal, and it drills these little holes. And so if ever you're shucking the oyster and it cracks and it's actually bright yellow on the inside, that's the animal, that's the sponge. And it's of the genus Cleona. There's a couple different species, and it can be really bad. And the only way that they avoid it in aquaculture oysters is by air drying. That's when, like in Katama especially, they bring their big cages and they put them on their rafts and they dry out for a couple of days. So wild oysters are just really prone to it. And some areas tend to have more than others. But unfortunately, there's not much we can do about it. It just makes them really hard to shuck. And it can with, if the infestation is really bad, and especially if it's on top of like dermo disease and high temperature and low dissolved oxygen, and lots of other things, it can cause enough stress that it can kill the oyster. Because the oysters are so amazing, they're always trying to put down new shell to protect themselves. They feel that critter coming through their shell. And so then they end up using a lot of energy to try to keep themselves whole. So it can kill them.
Thank you. Very interesting. All right, anything else for West Tiz, or should we move down the coast to Edgartown? Yes, sir. David.
Hey, everybody. This is actually, so this isn't part of Great Pond Foundation. This is I'll be speaking on behalf of the Millbrook Watershed Management Committee. We're a town committee with Town on West Tisbury, and we're actually through some CPC funds, we are conducting a year-long study of the Millbrook watershed, starting up at the Roth Woodlands all the way down to the outlet on Town Cove and Tisbury Great Pond. And we're designed this study late last year. We began it in spring, and we are attempting to get running a full year of nutrient analysis at several stations along the brook. And we're also trying to establish a water budget for the entire brook system, so that employs the use of several water level loggers and measuring stream flow throughout the year. So that's just a kind of a project we've been working on. We'll be going into next spring, I believe, and hopefully we'll have our report for town meeting the following year.
And does this have something to do with the potential removal of dams?
This is this is kind of a follow-up study to the previous exploratory study they did, I believe, back in, oh God, I can't remember now. It was before I came back to the vineyard, but this is a more intensive look at, what are the dynamics? What is how the hydrology of the area impacts the amount of water that flows into there? How do withdrawals impact that? What are the nutrients doing? How are the temperatures, the different diversions, dams, how those may impact the system? And we're going to try and, look at this holistically, with the future in mind, climate change and other demographic changes, things to be aware of. So that's just a real snippet of what we're working on. But on that committee is Bill Wilcox, Prudy Burt, Angela George, Cynthia Mitchell, Tim Bolin, Donna Polnock. We got a good crew from up on there.
So, great, thank you.
Richard,
right.
Can I ask a question about
Yes.
West Tisbury?
Yes, please.
Oak Bluffs and Tisbury also are addressing nitrogen issues in Lagoon Pond. And West Tisbury does contribute a small amount, but albeit an amount. And at least according to our engineers at the CWMP, West Tisbury needs to participate in the report. So do you have any suggestions on who we can contact? Because I think they've been somewhat apprehensive in participating in the cleanup of lagoons. I don't know if there are any contacts. Is there a committee about watersheds in West Tisbury?
Besides the Millbrook, what about the planning board? Ginny Jones from the planning board?
It would be a sign on because there needs to be an acknowledgement. There is contribution, and you know, it's either going to be on the shoulders of Tisbury and West Tisbury to take out their share, because we're talking about a regulatory process here. And, you know, we need to connect in some way with the powers that be in West Tisbury. And I don't know if that's the select board or the Board of Health, or if there is a watershed committee in West Tisbury.
Yeah, our committee is very focused on just the Millbrook. We haven't really taken on a role beyond just that focus study. Yeah, I agree with them. Either the planning board, or you could, you know, always contact Maria McFarland at the Concom. She might be able to put you in the right direction at least.
Okay, thank you.
I find Jen Rand to be very responsive as well.
Yeah,
the town
Jen's
administrator.
great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gail, for bringing that up as a fellow Oak Bluffs resident. And Doug, I'm sure you too. You go up to the head of the lagoon, a lot of that water's coming all the way from West Tisbury. All right, let's go to Eggatown. Oh, wait a minute. 2 more hands up. First, I saw Melinda.
I just wanted to add that Tisbury is now entering their CWMP process, and West Tisbury contributes 20% of the nitrogen to Tash Moose. So hard on the heels of Oak Bluffs, coming hat in hand to West Tisbury, you can expect Tisbury too.
Great. Okay, one other question I saw. Yep, go ahead.
I am off island and I've not been on the island in far too long, but over many years, I witnessed and took photographs, winter, summer, and so on, of the stormwater coming down from the upper end of Lambert's Cove Road and going into Uncle Seth's Pond. And there is some vegetation in between. The situation for that varies from time to time. And I'm just wondering if, related to this seemingly, to me, simple issue, but it must be contributing to the unhappy state of Uncle Seth's Pond, whether the commission or perhaps the Water Alliance, if it isn't already, if neither is already, could facilitate in the same way that the fact of the Water Alliance facilitates communication amongst all of you, whether it can facilitate increasing the knowledge that Emily indicated, you know, that there's sometimes lack of information, lack of coordination, communication within a town, you know, between different entities of the town government, but whether the commission or the Water Alliance could help facilitate increased knowledge of the towns. I know that there was a tremendous amount of work that went into getting the Great Ponds program started, but if it could be done on other issues, including trivial ones like runoff, so that these things can be fixed more readily.
That's not a trivial issue.
No,
okay.
but it's definitely something that needs to be addressed.
Yes, no,
We'll definitely have to think about it.
Absolutely does. And as the rainfall increases, more intense, a lot more stuff's washing into the ponds. All right.
So I mean, I didn't mean to minimize it. Obviously, I brought it up because I think it's important, but the other aspect of it is just the communication role and the facilitation role that if it's not happening already, and forgive me, I'm not wired into things now. So I mean, in an ideal world, what I'm saying is irritating and tedious because it's redundant, because it's already happening. But if not, you know, for there to be a way to facilitate every entity within each town being aware of the information it needs to know to deal with these issues better, and to collaborate more effectively as well.
I mean, you're so right, but this is exactly like what Rick brought up was, you know, that parking lot. That then we hear like, well, no, last thing we heard it was in Tisbury. It was supposed to be gravel, and all of a sudden it got paved, and there was just a stormwater study done by the EPA. Why did this happen? And I think that we're all always trying to find that answer. Like, wait, how do we? Like Concom wants this thing to happen, but they don't have the jurisdiction there. How do they link up with Board of Health so that in the planning board and bring it to the select board together so that these things can really like take hold and we can share all our messages. If anyone has the answer, share it.
I think they call that regionalization. 6 of everything. Yes, we need to work, and that's what the MVC is so important. Sherry. Okay, let's go to Eggatown.
I'm sorry, Adam left. We'll give him another thing to look at.
Okay, get on it. Get on it. Eggatown, is anybody still here from the Great Pond Foundation?
Yeah, I can do it. The brains behind the organization, they had to go to another call, so I can give a brief. Yeah, I can give a brief overview. We had our ecosystem monitoring program all summer, which has kept us very busy. We were actually we were monitoring in Chilmark Pond, Tisbury Great Pond, Egerton Great Pond, and Craxit this year. And we had our also our cyanobacteria monitoring program as well in those ponds. So we're doing our monitoring in there. And then me personally, I just wanted to plug while I have the speaker here. I've been working on a little project through some funds through the Edie Foundation for a set of workshops this coming November, December. And I actually earlier this spring, I sent out a survey to a lot of folks involved in pond management to kind of gauge interest in a bunch of different topics. And we're designing these workshops around the responses to that survey. And so for those of you who are here, quite a few of you here actually responded to my survey, had the time to do that. And I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I got some great feedback. And we're actually just starting to compile those results and get the topics, you know, the lineup kind of figured out. And we're starting to message some folks to ask them to come speak during these 3 workshops. And if anybody didn't get the survey or is still interested in contributing, I can post a link in the chat box in this Zoom call. If you're interested, I've still got the thing running. So I'd love to hear what you have to say or what people think in regards to that. But yeah, that's just something. Thank you to everybody again for contributing to that. That was fantastic.
Thank you for all your hard work. Let's move down the coast. Chappie, anything we should know about what's going on Chappie? I know they've had issues with moorings, boats mooring in the pond, and put a limit on that, I think.
I don't know much about
Chappie does have a DCPC now that there is no anchoring mooring in not off Chappie, but in Cape Pogue.
Great.
And we have monitored Katama Bay also. We stopped monitoring Cape Pogue and Pocha. Cape Pogue was really in pretty good shape, except for Sheerpin Cove. That was the only one that had an issue, but it closed and doesn't flush well. But Katama Bay, the nutrients have been starting to creep up a little bit. It's starting to really shoal in, and there's I know for the economic planner is working on dredging out the area down by the boat ramp by Katama. But I'm starting to see the nitrogen creeping up, but there's also filling in a lot there too. But so we'll look at that too.
There's another need for a big storm to break it open.
Mm-hmm.
Let it flow for a while. All right, up, go ahead, Jerry. You have your hand up? No. All right, let's move down the coast to the Egerton side of Senjikitagat. Nobody?
Did Greg have to leave?
I didn't have to leave, but I can't.
I'm sorry.
I can't report on anything exciting going on in Kentucky, sorry to say.
Last year, I worked with Senji and did a bathymetry survey for Kentucky, and we're looking at a hydrogeological or hydrodynamic survey to see about flow into Majors Cove and possibly doing some dredging work to open that up. And we've done the water quality there all summer. So, Chuck, do you have anything to add? Are you here?
Oh, well, I don't know. Don't. How
Oak
about
Bluffs and
Gary?
Edgartown shellfish departments are still growing oysters out there and planting them out for everybody to go harvest. So recreationally, and I think Edgartown at least does open it up commercially as well. The shellfish group is still working on, we've been planting spat on shell, like clusters of oysters into Majors Cove with the help, with funding from Friends of Kentucky. And our small project is meant to just complement what the towns are doing. The towns are growing single oysters in cages and sprinkling them out, and what you'll harvest is a single oyster like you get in a raw bar. And what we're doing are the spat on shell, which are makes the gnarly beds with all the nooks and crannies for all the critters to live in. And so we're planting those down, not with the goal of anyone harvesting them. Of course, by Division of Marine Fisheries laws, they are allowed to harvest them at some point, but hoping just to increase the ecological services that the oysters can serve.
Can I just do an FYI? Because again, I'm using this opportunity because everybody's here, but we're doing the CWMP, and part of the list of alternatives, which is usually a priority, is oyster farms or potential oyster farms. And we'd love to be able to do it. We think that the conditions of Kentucky may be more amenable to it, at least on the Oak Bluff side. So I don't know who we communicate that to, because we're going to incorporate it as a possibility in Kentucky. Is that viable? Chuck's here and Emma's here. And is it something that, as it goes forward, we work with you?
Yeah, we can talk about that more. And so in the lagoon, Chuck, I see you're unmuted. Do you want to talk, or want me to talk for you? Chuck and I had talked about they want to try out growing some oysters in the lagoon, in the same way that they do it in Kentucky, or in a similar way. It's going to have to be different because every pond is different. So the kind of cages that they can use is just different. And I've talked to Danielle about it too, just to give it a go, to try it. We know that Lagoon Pond has a lot of oyster drills, which is those little carnivorous snails. They're going to get, these oyster drills are going to give these new oyster farms on the Tisbury side a run for their money. And these oyster drills are why there are not wild oysters in the lagoon. Kentucky has, knock on wood, few to no oyster drills, and so the town projects work. Katama Bay, for example, has very few oyster drills, only in certain places, and that's another reason why the oyster farmers there are very successful. So, even if the towns want to grow oysters in Lagoon Pond, they're going to have to be protected for a long time, like long into their life cycle, to protect them from the drills. And the drills only exist in high salinity. They don't like low salinity. And that's why we don't have oyster drills in Edgartown Great Pond and Tisbury Great Pond, for example, and others where we don't, because the salinity is too low. So they don't survive. And that's why those are like big wild oyster ponds.
So when it comes to the solution, we work with the Shellfish Committee and with Chuck in conjunction okay, thank you.
What's keeping the oyster drills out of Senji? That's pretty salty.
Good luck.
How do we keep them? I mean, what should we be looking for?
I mean, you just keep your eye out for them and report them, but then there's nothing that we can do once they're there. They plague the oyster industries all over the coast. And I think, of course, we've talked about this before, and Rick came up with some paper or a report or something of someone trying to make oyster drill traps, and they don't really exist. I mean, the only way is just to pull those bags of oysters that might be full of oyster drills, shake them out, collect the drills, or air dry them so the drills die. But you really can't remove them once they're there. They don't have any other natural predators, I guess.
And that looks a lot different than what we talked, what I asked you about earlier, the thing that I thought was the acidification.
Right, yeah, they look very different. Oyster drill holes are bigger. They're more like what moon snails do. It's like a one perfectly round hole that's big enough that they can like insert parts of their body and slurp out the insides.
Ooh, all right, now we know what to look for now. All right, Sanjay, moving along, Farm Pond. Any progress on opening up Farm Pond?
No, we're just looking for money and studies and a bunch of other stuff. So it's really money. The plan's all done in terms of increasing the size of the culvert, which officially is going to be the quote unquote, at least nitrogen solution to the pond. But we need to work with DOT and other state organizations. And it's been quite a challenge in terms of getting all of the permitting done and the money to do what is required that the state or Mass DOT kind of wants us to do. So, you know, we
So
could
is
use
all
a
the
lot of
permitting
help.
done?
No, there's not. There's always, if you know, there's always something new that comes up. So right now it's Chuck. Is Chuck here? Because Chuck will be able to tell you much better than me. So if he's here, you should put him on. It's a scour study that we need to do. And we just applied for a grant with the help of the MVC and didn't get it. Is Chuck here? I can't tell.
Says Chuck's iPhone, Uncle Chuck's iPhone.
Can you have Chuck chime in?
Yeah.
He's the lead on this.
I'm here. I'm having little sound problems. If you can hear me.
Yep.
Like Gail was saying, the permitting is difficult. That scour study she brought up was a fairly new event that we need to get funding for to get that scour study done, which could move ahead in our permitting process. And once we can get that accomplished, it seems like that's the major hurdle for kind of this phase we're in right now, which is the early stage. All of the project's been ongoing for years. But once we can get that accomplished, I think things will really start to move ahead a lot quicker.
Doug, you got your hand up? Nope. Okay, let's move on to Oak Bluffs Harbor, the jetties, anything on that? I guess that's another project that's in the works.
I know that Todd is working with maybe Army Corps, but it's in progress. I think the progress is a lot better than we experienced at Farm Pond. But we also have a jetty project, and this doesn't have to do with water quality. It has to do with preserving the beach because of sea level rise, which is a jetty project, at least a design anyway, with the little jetty and the big jetty near Pay Beach and Town Beach. And that, I think the design is there. Again, it's the permitting and the money. So.
Yep, money, and more money.
Yeah, there's a solution. It's just the permitting and the money.
And Sunset Lake, the drainage there, that was just quite a project that they haven't quite finished yet.
It wasn't the drainage. I think they cleaned it up. I don't know if Emma knows more about it, but it's the cleaning up the bracken, yeah, improving the drainage, or at least what's going on, and also to address the sea level rise and flooding. So they have some, I don't know, Richard, if you've seen it, like what do they call it? Pockets around the pond for water to collect, and like actually a little bit of a bridge as well as a walkway. That's all I know. But, yeah.
Very nice. All right. I think we've made it almost all the way around. I think we made it back to Lagoon Pond. Anybody else have anything?
I give just a few like shellfish groupings. I just want to tell everybody that we did finally sign our 15-year lease with the Division of Marine Fisheries for the Hughes Hatchery. So we've been here since about 2012. Thanks, Doug. And slowly growing into it more and more, and trying to think about how to use the space, but it hasn't been our space to just take over. So now it is. So we will have free reign of the building to do all the great things, and we'll need to come up with the big cash flow to rehab the building and keep everything going.
Again.
We're still experimenting a little bit with Phragmites. We did a tiny harvest on the bridge at Muddy Creek this year. But what was fun was that we then sent it to New England Biochar on the Cape in Eastham and had it made into biochar. And then the plan is then Island Grown Initiative is going to take that biochar and use it in their field. So we're trying to bring the, in just tiny, tiny steps, playing with Phragmites and bringing it full circle. We're also working with a team on Cape Cod on ribbed mussels, because they're trying to do some marsh restoration. So we're still working on the ribbed mussel projects, trying to get better at those. And we've also been growing surf clams for the Southern New England Aquaculture Center, CMAC, on Cape Cod, looking at using the inshore species of surf clam as like another alternative aquaculture species. So just some extra fun projects we've been into, in addition to growing all the other stuff. And water quality in the lagoon this summer for us was definitely kind of funky. There are times where things, like just a couple weeks ago, everything just sort of stopped growing. No, the scallops stopped growing. The surf clams kept growing. So whatever was out there, the scallops didn't like. So that's not something that we want to see. Often these trends are across the whole island. So I hear things from Danny and from Chuck and from Isaiah and the guys in Edgartown that they see a lot of the same trends. And then again, it's nothing that we can control. It could have to do with the overall increases of nitrogen and other funky stuff coming from, stormwater runoff, basically. It can also just be climatic cycles that on a much, much broader scale. But when that phytoplankton community changes in the pond, it really impacts the way that the shellfish feed and gather nutrients and nutrition to be able to go make it through the winter and to be able to spawn.
So Emma, are you saying there was a plankton issue in the pond? And the other question is, could it be, since we had such a very, very hot summer, the temperature of the water, but getting back to the plankton issue, is there a way to measure plankton?
There are, and we've started a training course that's goes through, it's through NOAA, through the Fed department, to learn how to identify harmful algal species more. But sometimes it's not that they're harmful algal species. It's just that whatever is just being dominant isn't like great nutrition for the scallop. So me and all of our staff, under Rick's guidance from his living room, are learning how to identify all these better. And yes, absolutely, Gail, it's all the things. They're impacted by precipitation and by temperature. And we don't know, we can't tell how much of this is going to, like, is this becoming the new normal? I hate that term, but the new norm, or are these just things that come and go? Like, we won't know that for years to come, and only if we take really good notes.
Yeah.
But preventing nitrogen from going on the pond, because it's going to be a really expensive project, is going to help no matter what.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right. All right, Jerry, did you have your hand up? Yep.
I did, because Richard, you flew right from Lagoon Pond to Aquina, and your plane went right over Tajmu.
Yep,
and
that was my next, I was going to mention that.
Didn't stop.
Yep, I realized that.
I'll just start. Melinda can chime in. So TWI's got a couple things. We're very concerned about Tajmu. Tajmu is the one pond in Tisbury with the lagoon and it's not a pond, but the other waterways, the harbor. Tajmu has no management plan or DCPC, and it's very crowded with recreational boats in the summertime. There's nitrogen issues, there's bacteria issues, there's eelgrass issues. So TWI had a meeting with a number of town officials to begin the process of developing a management plan, and Melinda can chime in on that a little bit more. In just interest of time, I'll just skip to another Tajmu issue. There's a outfall off of West Spring Street that flows into Tajmu that we are very concerned about. We've taken a number of bacterial measurements with the help of Marcella and Andrew at the Quintal Lab, and it's very high in fecal coliform, which is the indicator organism for shellfish, which is the concern at that end of Tajmu. And we recently took some samples and are working with the University of New Hampshire, Stephen Jones, to do PCR and qPCR testing to determine the source of the bacteria, whether it's human or goose or something else. So we had the samples tested this week. We're just getting results, and we'll be interested to find out what where this bacteria is coming from. Oh, Melinda?
That's a pretty good summary of what TWI has been focusing on. And I will say that there was a larger area in Tajmu closed to shellfish this summer, and it was due to a change in definition on the part of the DMF. It really brings into sharp focus the conflict between recreational boating and shellfishing, which is why TWI has called for some kind of management plan, and we'll be working on that. As far as what other things are going on in town, you may have heard of the Packer project for the wind farm. And it's just been before the commission and awaits kind of final discussion and approval. It certainly will transform the inner harbor of Tisbury. And we're all, certainly paying attention to the impacts of that. The other thing that the town is doing is they're doing a comprehensive dredge permit. So that would cover all the areas that get dredged routinely in town. And that would include significantly Tajmu Inlet and also the Inner Harbor Inlet, which really helps flush the Inner Harbor. They're also working, as we talked earlier, on stormwater technologies that might be brought to bear in Tisbury that would relieve flooding, especially on Beach Road and Five Corners and Lagoon Pond Road. Disappointing that the DOT project on Beach Road is not really doing a comprehensive redo of the stormwater facility there. They are cleaning it out and repairing the things that are broken, but it probably will not significantly address flooding on that road for the future. And the other thing that the town has going is climate resilience study that was done last year with a storm tide pathways study just for the Inner Harbor of Tisbury. And sort of piggybacking on that this year, there's some proposal to reinforce the downtown Inner Harbor beach by building up a large berm around the harbor. That's probably going to be up for discussion townwide in the coming year. So I think that's about it that I can remember about what's going on in Tisbury.
Wow, it's a lot going on. All right, I think we've made it around. I didn't talk about the pond next to Lambert's Cove Beach. That's got land bank purchases on it, and there's going to be more public access, for better or worse.
Yep, that's James Pond, and we've been monitoring there every summer. We've been working with Buzzards Bay Coalition, and Buzzards Bay Coalition is coming up with a survey of their, I don't know if you're familiar with James Pond. It has a very serpentine, very twisty opening. And so they're looking at possibly getting a better flush in there. The water quality in there has been really poor. The cyanobacteria has been high. It's a beautiful pond. It'll be interesting that Land Bank is going to open it up and there will be public access.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful pond. There used to be shellfishing there. There are still shellfish there. They're surviving, but it's closed. So there's some work on it.
Great, thank you, thank you. All right, does anybody have any more questions?
Just a quick one to Sherry. It's great that James Pond is now being monitored because it was orphaned in the past. How many years? Just approximately how many years do you have on it now?
I have at least 5 years of data on it now. And we also looked at one of the freshwater ponds we looked at was Cess Pond. We monitored that for cyanobacteria, and Cess Pond did not have a real big issue with cyanobacteria. It's probably the only thing that it doesn't have, but while I have everybody, I have had interest from different people about getting like a regional dredge. I know I work with Mink Meadows. They've had severe cyanobacteria blooms and they have to dredge their pond. They got a price tag of like $900,000 to dredge their 2 little ponds. And then I know Chilmark Pond would like to dredge. And I don't know, if we could put our collective brains together, it's like, would it be, rather than everybody spending all this money to do a regional dredge, be a great job for somebody. Just kind of putting it out there, just an idea. Melinda, can you help me?
Well, I certainly recall a number of years ago now that the county looked into that at the time. This was before Eggertown got its dredge for Eggertown Great Pond. And the best resource, I think, for information and guidance would be the Cape. What's the county? I'm drawing a senior moment blank.
Barnstable.
Barnstable County has its own dredge. Thank you very much, Richard. And they had a lot to tell me about how they ran their dredge program. And at the time, we really couldn't create island-wide interest. But I think new information like what you're talking about, the price and the nature of the business is that there's only certain windows where dredging can happen. So sometimes you have to wait a year to just have access to a dredge during the time you can do it. So I think it's worth a new updated investigation for that.
Who's playing ping pong or whatever they're doing?
My husband is typing.
I don't know.
That's not typing, is it? Or maybe it is. All right, I was just going to say something. I forgot what I was going to say. I got distracted. Oh, well, anything else that anybody hasn't said or wants to say about a particular issue? I think we've covered a lot of territory. I hope somebody's taking notes. Should have brought that up at the beginning because I couldn't run the meeting and take notes.
Oh, it's being recorded.
Being recorded. This is being recorded. Great. That's good. That's good. So like I say, if anybody has any more questions or concerns or things that happen, Sherry's the person to get a hold of. And I think what I gather from this is going to have to be a lot of effort to regionalize, to work together the towns instead of everybody going off in their own different direction if we're going to solve these problems. So I think everybody's got to, oh, that was what the thought I had. As far as the dredge goes, I don't know how many of you know this, but Vineyard, the Vineyard Wind Project has offered to give the island a lot of money over the course of the lifespan of this project, if it all works out the way they hope it's going to work out. And Vineyard Power is going to be the group that's going to be distributing that money amongst the towns, amongst the different organizations. They might be somebody to reach out to about a regional dredge or regional this, regional that, things that have to do with water quality. So it's just a thought.
Idea.
Melinda.
I just want to thank you, Richard, for stepping up to the plate and organizing or chairing this meeting. And I'm wondering what's happening going forward. Do we have a plan for a monthly meeting like we used to, or just what's in the cards?
I think it's
Glad you brought that up.
up to Sherry and if everybody, I mean, I know it's nice to get in the room together, but this makes it so much easier to run and answer questions and address people. I see your names right there, so I don't have to rack my brain to figure who wants to speak. So I think this works pretty well. I mean, we might want to shorten it a little bit, but we had a lot of catching up to do.
Right. Yeah. We can go back to, I know Friends of Senji, they meet on the second Thursday. I think, Greg, is that correct, Greg?
That's correct.
So,
We meet in the morning.
and then the shellfish officers have to go away sometimes. Is there I don't know if I think we were the second Thursday but that's a lot for Friends of Senji and we like their attendance. Is there a day that we would like to pick that would work? We could do the third
Thursday.
The third Thursday? Emma, is that what you said?
Yeah, sure.
And we can go back to 12:15. I just had we had a conflict with our Zooms.
Yeah.
Because the people who are here, obviously this time kind of works. And it's always the people who aren't here who are like, how do we get you here? What do you need?
Right.
We've always done in like the 12 something range. And we always say the meetings need to be shorter, but we love talking about what we're doing.
Everybody has so much going on. It's crazy. I had
honestly,
thought also about possibly doing like a summary, but I don't know who could do that. You know, it's write it all up. It's like what each group is doing. So then we could go, oh, look, if you read it beforehand, I don't know. I
think for us, the Zoom format is a lot easier because we don't have to go racing down from Aquina and all that too. So
okay.
For what it's worth, we appreciate it.
So we will aim for October 21st at 12:15.
Okay.
October 21st at 12:15. Okay. And if people, do want to sort of write up what their organization has been up to and submit it to Sherry, she can make that available to everybody.
If we did some of that beforehand, then we could potentially have shorter meetings.
That's a good idea. And then people would have questions already. Yep, that's a great idea.
It takes a little more work for some of us, but even if some of us did it, it would help.
Yeah, great. All right.
Gotta have a newsletter.
Have a newsletter.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
It's great to see you all.
Thanks, Sherry.
This is just wonderful. Great to see you all. And
Yep.
thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Rich.